Daphne, have you ever experienced in one single day, absolute elation, overwhelming joy,
Yes.
and somewhere, maybe a couple of hours or even a couple of minutes later, felt crushing defeat all in a single day?
Yes. Sometimes minute by minute, actually.
Minute by minute. That's what we're going to talk about today. How do we find the balance that we're really looking for?
I have
And
nothing to add to this. Let's
I
just do it.
I know, it's the thing is
Perfect.
I usually let Daphne do the whole little thing up here, and that gives Cliff time to press this button right here.
Well,
Welcome to Life, the ultimate choose your own adventure game with hosts Cliff Ravenscraft and Daphne Scott. Join this dynamic duo as they explore the profound concept of life as a thrilling adventure, blending ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Embrace the joy of living with presence, creativity, and playfulness. It's time to navigate the game of life together. Are you ready to play? Let the adventure begin.
So, Daphne, today, the words that stuck out to me are navigate the game of life.
okay, what stood out to me is creativity and playfulness. That was
Wonderful.
so fun. That was just so fun at the beginning.
It is always fun. Exactly. There's lots of playfulness that happens both behind the scenes and in front of the camera on this podcast. You gotta have fun.
Well, it's my preference.
Yes, that's true. You don't have to. We can choose to not have fun.
We can. We can choose it. We can or not. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. I think this is a perfect segue into this idea of equanimity. We're gonna
Oh,
an
that's right.
idea into
We could
practice.
just choose to just be. Let's How about we do a podcast episode where we don't do anything?
We just sit here.
We just sit.
You know, Andy Kaufman, who was a comedian in the 70s, he did in the 80s too, but I can't remember when he passed away, but he did that. He actually came out on stage and just stood there. And the audience's response was just they went from awkward to just laughing to then angry. Just do something. It was brilliant, actually. Yeah, we
So
could just do that.
today we're going to talk about equanimity, and
Yeah.
it came up, I believe, in something we were chatting about last week in our
Yeah.
previous episode. And I remember saying something along the lines of Don Miguel Ruiz suggests, don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
And it was all about feeling really down in the dumps if somebody says something negative or overly critical of you and stuff of that nature. And it's like, hey, don't take it personally. But when he says don't take anything personally, he means don't take anything personally. He says the
Yeah.
opposite is true. When somebody praises you and they lavish you with great accolades, don't take that personally either. It has danger within itself. And you're like, I think we'll talk about that next week. So what do you want to talk about, Daphne?
Yeah, that's it. A lot of times people talk about wanting balance in their life, and I think there's probably some truth that it's like clock time balance. I want to feel like I can do this well and do that well, be here, have my mind and body in the same place at the same time. What I've also experienced in my own life and talking to people is that there's a deeper balance that people are looking for. It's sort of like, how do I ride these waves? This good stuff and the seemingly bad stuff. This is really the essence of this whole conversation. It's seemingly bad stuff because the truth is we don't really know. I'm not a fortune teller. And but really what people start to desire is how do I navigate this stuff of life, this sort of up what feels like an up and down. So I don't feel this experience quite so much of the up and down and being drug around by the stuff of life. It's sort of like life just grabs us by the nose and is just dragging us, around. So as I've worked with people and in my own life, having more of this sort of, oh, yeah, what is that? How do I do this? What is this thing? The name for it then is that I use for it is equanimity, which comes from a lot of the Buddhist approach. And I've studied that for a very long time and had many practices. But that's what we're really going to talk about. So it's this balanced perspective of what you just said, the bad stuff, but also the good stuff, Cliff. And I think this is something that this is where the practice of equanimity really gets people because they're like, well, wait a second. Shouldn't I be enjoying the real good stuff? And the answer is yes. And we're going to talk about what it means to have an attachment and also an aversion.
So the question is, so that you just spoke the question, shouldn't I enjoy the good stuff?
Yeah.
Well, if the answer to that question is yes, then should I enjoy the bad stuff? And I would argue if the answer was yes to the first question, it might be yes to the second.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. It is. And underneath all of this, I think where we'll get to and what we're going to start with is really the foundation of this reality of impermanence.
Right.
That no experience, nothing is always and always is nothing, right? So just things are coming and going all the time. And it's this attachment and aversion. So we get attached to feeling good and we have an aversion to feeling bad. And it's when we really get stuck in the overall attachment of either of those positions that we can really start. It's really the root of suffering, really. Yeah. So we can enjoy all of it. We can love
Yeah.
all of it, even the
And
stuff that's not so fun. Seems not so fun.
that seems not so fun. And how fun something is, I have discovered has a lot to do with the meaning and the narrative that we put on the experience itself. It's the filters that we see the experience through. It's the words that we associate to what we're experiencing, what we're witnessing, what we're the situation, and also, not just based upon our past, but our projection of what this means for our future.
Yes, and you asked me in one of our shows, I said the phrase, "Time is always a variable," and I didn't feel like I answered the question very well. You said expand on it, and this is actually where this really shows up because exactly what you just said. When we have an experience to attach any sort of to get attached around it, to want to hold on to it, is what I mean when I talk about attachment, or to want to get rid of it, which is what I mean when I say aversion. It also implies a sense of time that I know or believe that I know what this is going to mean in the future. And I really don't ever. So that really there's this essence of time that lives in this as well, that we really have this idea that we know what this is going to mean, or that we even going into the past, right? That we can bring the past into the future and have a sense of like, well, my past means this. It's who I am now,
Mm.
right? Yeah, and who I will always be. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been studying a lot of different spiritual paths, as you know,
Yeah.
and all of them seem to point to this situation that our point of power is in the present.
Yeah.
If we understand that we can have our experiences of the past, but that doesn't have to actually speak to who we are today and where we're going overall. That's another topic for another day. But
Well, now I've got our next show topic.
well, here's what I want to draw in on. You mentioned the fact that you said you were going to tell the story of the farmer. Is that
Yeah.
because there's a story that I'm thinking of, and it might be the story of the farmer because I've heard this stories told from a lot of different perspectives and using a
There
lot
are
of.
several farmer stories. Yeah,
But the idea of, do we really know if something's good or bad? Is that the story that
that
I'm?
is.
So do you want to share that here?
I'd love
Since we
to.
were talking about this perception of this thing, it's either good or bad.
Yeah, and I'm just going to read this because I
Okay.
think, instead of try paraphrasing because it's so good, it won't take very long. There was an old Zen farmer. So a lot of these stories come from Zen or the Taoist, Buddhist stories. And every day the farmer used his horse to help work his fields and keep his farm healthy. But one day his horse ran away. And all the villagers said, "Oh my goodness, this is horrible. Your horse, what horrible, horrible experience." And he said, the farmer responded, "Bad luck, good luck, who knows? Who knows?" So the villagers were very confused by this response, or, essentially, why isn't he more upset by this? He should be more distraught. A few weeks went by, and then one afternoon, while he was working outside, his horse wandered back and he had a bunch of other horses with him. So now the farmer had 10 horses. Of course, the village is elated for this farmer, and they're like, "Oh, what great luck. You have 10 horses now." And he said, "Good luck, bad luck. Who knows? Who knows?" So a few weeks later, he has to break in these horses. The farmer's son is breaking in the horses, and he falls and he breaks his leg. Of course, the village, like, "This is horrible. Now your son has a broken leg." And they commiserate with him, and he says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" You can see where his response is going in the story. So a month later, The farmer's son was still recovering. He couldn't walk. He had to use crutches. He couldn't do any manual labor to help his father. And a regiment of the army showed up, and they were recruiting, and they were going to take any able-bodied young man with them to fight in this war. And when the regiment came to the farmer's house, they saw his broken leg, and they're like, he can't fight. He can't go. And so they marched past and left him right where he was. And of course, all the villagers came by and said, amazing. So good. He broke his leg. This is such good luck. Luck. You're so fortunate. And the farmer said, bad luck, good luck. Who knows? That's the essence of is that the story you were thinking of?
Yes, it's exactly the story. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the essence of there's a few things that we can take away from the story. And of course you'll comment on this. But the first one is that the farmer just didn't really know where any of these events were going. Right. And the essence of the parable, if you will, is that what seemed like maybe an unfortunate event turned out to be a good event. And what could have seemed like a fortunate event could have turned out to be a bad event. So this farmer was holding an essence of equanimity, that he wasn't getting too down about anything, and he wasn't getting too high about it either.
Right.
And there's a little bit more, which is probably that he didn't really care and which we'll talk about as we get into the show. But he had a different sort of way of probably relating to his experiences in life. Nevertheless, I think this is a really good example of equanimity and how he just didn't know where anything was going to go.
I think that it is a perfect example of equanimity, and the story resonates with me at a lot of different levels, because I know that there are times when there's something that I feel is a possession of mine, and possession means that there's some level of attachment, mine. Don't take it from me.
Especially my identity and my impression of myself.
Exactly. So there's the identification of, or me relating to the story of losing the horse. It's like, how that seems like a bad thing.
Yeah.
But then getting really excited to know that, oh my gosh, he came back and he brought other horses with it. It's like, wow, hit the lottery. And this is exactly what my experience of life was like for so long. Riding this roller coaster, I would have incredible lows because my horse ran away. I'd have incredible highs because 10 more came back. I'd have incredible lows because my son broke his leg. I'd have incredible highs because he wasn't drafted into the war and he's safe from that potential harm. And the reality is we don't know what the outcome of any of that is.
Right.
And there's still part of me that hears that story and says, well, it's a great story how it all kind of worked out in the end.
Yeah. Right.
Like it's a net positive. And it's like, but no, equanimity is not net positive. We still don't know. We don't know what could have happened had his son went off and whatever. And, maybe because the son went off, he's the one who turned the tides and they won the war and their land is not invaded and taken over. And
sure.
So, I mean, there's an endless, infinite number of possibilities of how anything can go. And if what this story doesn't tell is, and you talked about the fact that maybe he doesn't care, which is there is at some level a spiritual and maybe even a Buddhist principle to that. But there's also what it doesn't say is whether or not he found joy in living regardless of what was happening on the outside, which for me, coming from, like the Christian perspective, there's this scripture that says, be joyful always. And again, I say rejoice. And so how often should you be joyful? In all circumstances, all the time, in every situation, in every circumstance, give thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
when possible.
The question, that's the question. Is it possible in all circumstances?
My short answer is yes. Is that reliably my experience? No. I think, as we work with our, we go to the consciousness gym, right? I think that I certainly have met people where that's an experience for them. I wouldn't say that that's been my reliable experience. I would say that what is true for me is the shifts in my consciousness happen very quickly, and I'll tell a story about getting sort of a tornado coming this last weekend, and like a literal one, as I was camping. And, I can shift in those experiences very, very quickly. And there is this part of being our human side too, and being able to be with emotion and be with experience as it arises. For example, a friend's navigating moving her mother into a long-term care, and there's a lot of sadness there. So, and fear and that arises. Of course, also with what you were talking about, Cliff, with there's a lot of story that's embedded in this as well, right? So she's navigating that and riding that wave. And if there's a skipping over of the sadness or the emotion, I think this is the sort of the woolier part of this, that we can do these spiritual bypasses with a lot of these things. We've talked about this on the show previously, that we can ignore our emotional state. And I watch people do a lot of things to not feel. For example, you can use drugs, you can use alcohol, you can, which is a drug, it's all drugs, and try to use a form of escapism that may not be very helpful either. So I don't know that for me, that it's about needing to maintain a sense of joy all the time, or to act in a certain way, like, oh, it's all good. I mean, I think there's a danger there just as well, versus the opportunity to notice what is occurring and say, well, I noticed there's some sadness here. I'm wondering what that's about. Am I telling myself a story? Maybe I'm not so thrilled about this moment. And I'll use the tornado. So there was a tornado that rose. We're in an RV, Bridget and I, with our friends, and the alert wakes me up out of a pretty much dead sleep. It had been raining and thundering. I don't know if you've ever been in an RV when it's raining and thundering, but it's quite loud. Somehow I managed to still fall asleep. But the National Weather Service alert starts going off. And it was just interesting to watch all of us navigating this. And do we leave the RV? Do we go to the main bathroom, which, by the way, was just a cement slab with drywall? I mean, I don't we were going to be, at least I wouldn't have been entirely alone as this tornado comes through the RV park. And watching all of us navigate this, I do what I do best, which is to go to data. I want a little bit more information, and I get on the local weather, and other people are listening to National Weather Service. And then the group is sharing different apps to know, we're all wanting the sense of certainty of like what's coming. And, and I have so much appreciation for that. In that experience, in that moment, even in that experience, I noticed like which part of me was showing up. Like, what did I want? Like, I was getting my learnings, like, oh, I notice I want certainty here. I want to know I'm going to be okay. I want to know that me and my friends and everyone are going to be safe. And I noticed the fear of wanting to stay, the fear that came, and the desire to stay alive, which is probably a good thing, So getting my learnings even in those moments was so helpful. And also realizing there really wasn't anything else I could do. I had taken all the action that I could take in that moment. It was done. If the tornado was going to come and land where we were standing, that was going to happen. And there wasn't a whole lot more I could do. So these moments of finding balance, finding the equanimity of being with in that moment what was occurring right then and there, and noticing my emotions at the same time. I noticed fear. I noticed my desire for certainty. I noticed mostly fear. I noticed there was joy too. I was laughing. We were in this bathroom with wet dogs. I don't know if you've ever been trapped in a bathroom with wet dogs, but they really, really stink because it was pouring rain. And so there was actually joy and love and caring there at the same time. I think what really the essence of being with our emotions is being able to just ride that, and also not get carried away with those either. So not ignoring them, and at the same time not being carried away with them.
Yeah, I think that's the key. When I think of my experience and my journey with finding greater equanimity in life, it's
Mhm.
not that I am not experiencing the emotion of elation
Yeah.
and excitement and thrill and delight, or on the opposite side, anxiety, fear, lack of self-confidence, absolute worry, dread, sometimes anger. It's not that I'm not experiencing those.
Yes.
It's just that in the midst of that happening, I'm able to find the narrative that's taking place that's causing those, and to sit in observation and awareness
Yes.
of what story is being told that's creating this emotional reaction inside of me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just
Yeah,
being
that's
in that
it.
season, and it's like, okay, so here's what I desire, and what I'm trying to think of, is there any scenario where coming to a place of peace, love, thankfulness, gratitude, and joy is not possible?
Mm,
It I think it is, from my experience, it has been possible for me to have a feeling of anxiety, fear, and worry about a given situation and circumstance, and become aware of the fact that it's happening, the story that's been told that I'm aware of, the thoughts that have been flowing through my brain, and then all of a sudden, it's like, you know what? I'm still able to, in this place, find appreciation.
yeah,
I'm able to, in this moment, find joy. I'm in this moment able to find this place of equanimity.
yeah,
In spite of the fact that nothing externally has shifted,
that's right.
everything, all of the external stimuli that caused me to have the reaction of the fear, anxiety, and the worry and the dread is still not changed.
Exactly. The situation on the video camera is exactly the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the midst of it, I was able to find this equanimity. And
Yes.
so and for me, that's what when I think of that scripture, be joyful always, in all situations give thanks. In a way, I think it's a call to equanimity. It's a
Yeah.
call to find that in the midst.
Yes. I can absolutely see that for sure. And I think underneath, uh, I think what we're really, I think what's coming out of this conversation is just the nuance of that, right?
Yes.
Like, what does this really mean? What does it mean? Okay, I notice these emotions arising. Well, okay, great. I can appreciate feeling sadness.
Yeah.
There's a sweetness to that. When you really learn to ride that wave, there's a sweetness to it. It can those our emotions and our feelings can show us these paths, these other parts of what we may be missing. It's funny when I think about sadness, I'll use that one as an example, and where that shows up in our body. It's sort of interesting that sadness and joy can show up looking very similarly. Right? Like you experience enough joy and water comes out of your eyes, and I experience sadness and water comes out of my eyes. I've always found that so curious. And oftentimes these things run together. So yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And Cliff, I think that is what comes from equanimity and what comes from impermanence and recognizing these truths and the practice of equanimity is we do have a greater and greater appreciation for these moments in life, whether they seem on the surface at first blush negative or positive. And I think it also teaches us this opportunity it's fine to have preferences. I think this was one of when I was learning about the practice of equanimity, what I struggled with the most was the idea that and I have this language now, I didn't have it then, but the idea that I couldn't have preferences. And this is where this whole game of life thing started, I think, bubbling up in me. It's like, yeah, I have preferences. I would prefer to, for example, it was really hot this weekend. I would prefer to probably sit in a room that's maybe 72 degrees than outside where it's 90 degrees and 100% humidity, being in the baking sun. Probably have a preference. I can drop the probably. There's a preference there.
Yeah.
And when life doesn't show up that way, how jangled around it do I become? And I can operate from a place of I can campaign for my preference. I can take action towards my preference if I like. It's a fun game to play. And I can take the action towards the experiences I want to have in my life too. Like I said, for example, last year, I would love to do this podcast with you, Cliff. That was an experience I wanted to have. Now, if it didn't come to pass, I definitely want to talk about that. If it didn't come to pass, great. That's perfect too. So we can campaign. And I think that was what I struggled with the most with equanimity. It's like, well, so it's all up for grabs. Like I don't get to do the things that I want to do in my life, or I don't get to have a vision for my life now. Like because I'm not supposed to get too excited about it, or not supposed to get too high and not get too low. And working with the teachers that I worked with and the great guides that I had in my life, they're like, absolutely not. They're like, absolutely act on your preferences. That's great if you like. And who do you become when you don't get what you want?
Yeah.
Watch that. And who do you become when you do get what you want?
You
Watch
talk
that.
you talk about your experience with having a preference of temperature. Ironically, the first time I was really deeply studying equanimity and experiencing, this whole finding this equanimity,
Yeah.
one of the experiences that was given, I learned this in the winter time. It was the winter time when I was studying this.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And there were stories of these Buddhist monks that are up in the Himalayas, and it's absolute freezing cold, and they have no blankets, no anything, and they're just like blah 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 blah. It's like, and I'm watching these documentaries. I was like, what?
I don't think so.
So the fun thing is that it was like kind of like saying, okay, so here's what you desire. This is what you want. This is what you prefer. This temperature to be this. And what really causes the suffering is that when you go out and what is not
Yes.
living up to what your preference is.
Yeah.
So now, Daphne, I don't know if you know this about me, but I wear shorts and a short sleeve shirt all year round.
Yes.
All right.
We talked. I remember us talking about this.
Right. So
Yes.
there's very few times that I'm not wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt.
I love it.
And here in the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, it gets down sometimes just below 0 Fahrenheit. And on average, during the winter, it's like 10 or 12 degrees outside. It's pretty chilly.
Yeah, that's chilly
So, and we have
for
a dog,
me.
and we have a dog, and we walk him all the time. And so during this process, there was one time I'm like, okay, I'm going to try something. I'm going to go out. It's 12 degrees. I'm walking Leo outside in my shorts and my t-shirt,
Yes.
understanding that it's 12 degrees and it's windy.
So it's 12
Full
degrees and then
full
cold with the wind.
fully accepting it for what it is. And it's kinda like what I see with people doing the Wim Hof method and these
Yeah.
ice baths and ice plunges and stuff like that. I kind of had that kind of approach to it. I
Okay.
went out and instantly it was a shock to my system, and then I started using my breathing technique, and before I knew it, I was just absolutely in the present moment, and now this isn't something I would wanna do every single day,
Right.
but I actually went out there without rushing my dog. I'm literally outside letting him do his thing, and I'm absolutely one with the temperature.
Yeah.
It was no big deal that it was 12 degrees. Now, some of it probably had to do with I know that I'm not going to freeze and have hypothermia, and I know that the house, which is warm, is right there. I'm going to be there in just a few moments, and all this other stuff. So I had a lot of things going for me that maybe these monks are far more
Maybe
advanced
they've
than
had to
I am.
go a step. Yeah, maybe they've had to go a step further and still.
But
Right.
what I found is there have during that same season,
Yeah.
literal season, there were times when I was bundled up with my shorts. I'm still wearing my shorts, but I got my big winter coat on, right?
With your shorts.
With my shorts.
I gotta be honest with you. You're one of the people walking through a parking lot that I'm probably like the people watching so great.
Yeah, yeah.
So look
Oh
at this
gosh.
guy. It's so good.
So
I know I'm
so
also one of those people.
so I've got this big, huge, massive winter coat on and my shorts, and I'm outside, and I noticed that I'm clenched. I'm like I'm
Yeah.
gonna give myself a headache because I'm like, ugh, I'm resisting. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I'm freezing. Matter of fact, this happened at Costco, and I've told you this story before. I don't think we were doing the podcast yet. But so we were walking from this back parking lot to Costco. I'm in my shorts, winter coat, and I'm like, "Ugh," and I'm about ready to have a tension headache as a result.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it occurred to me, wait a second, what am I doing? Why am I doing this to my physical body? I
Yeah.
am creating stress. I am creating tension. I'm literally doing this. And I just loosened up all my facial muscles, took a deep breath, and I slowly accepted the temperature for what it was. And I was able to enjoy the second half of that journey into the Costco store and luckily I didn't have that big, huge tension headache.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, and I don't know if this is true for you in that moment, but as you relax it, well, first of all, there's a phrase that kept coming as you were talking, like that which we resist persists,
Yes.
right? The more you just keep resisting that, the more suffering you're going to go through. So that's one thing that's true. I think the other part of it that really lives is like you knew at some point, and you brought this up, and I think it's important, like it was going to pass. That at
Yeah.
some point you wouldn't feel cold anymore. Let's say, for example, you were trapped outside for the next 3 hours and you did freeze to death. Also, it would pass then.
Yeah. That's
Right?
true.
So there was some way that experience, there's just no experience that's permanent.
Right.
Right. And so when we get with that, I think that really starts to give us some balance. So even me being out in the heat this weekend, like, I'm like, there's really nothing for me to worry about here. Yeah, it's my preference not to maybe be sitting in the baking heat. And this isn't going to last forever.
I love that phrase. There's nothing here to worry about.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is that there's always something to worry about,
If you like.
and there's always a choice not to worry about.
Very good point. Yes. You always
Yeah.
can choose to worry if you like.
Yeah,
If you like. Yeah.
it's like, what did I went to somebody the other day, they said, "How you doing?" And I gave my normal response, and I said, "How are you doing?" "Well, it's been better, and it's been worse." It's like, isn't
How
that
true is
always
it?
true?
It's always true.
Isn't that always true?
It is always true. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I thought like this when I learned about these 8 worldly winds, this was really helpful to me, because it really speaks to the the special nature of equanimity and how helpful it can be to us, and also just the stuff of life, the impermanence of it. So we will go through praise and blame, we will experience pain and pleasure, fame and disrepute, which I just love that word, disrepute. So good. Fame and disrepute, and gain and loss. And that, those eight worldly winds describe this sort of human experience, right? These waves that will just come. We're going to go through, all of the good stuff that's going to happen, and the less than savory things that are going to happen. No one gets out of life with those things, and therefore, the equanimity, the balanced perspective, can be really helpful, because these
Yeah,
things will come. Nothing's permanent. These things will
yeah.
come. Yeah, yeah. So I found those very helpful when I
So,
did
Daphne,
that
how
language.
many weeks have we been doing this? Is this our 22nd week now that we've
Yeah,
been doing this?
yeah.
And we have our first comment that is ready to be thrown onto the screen from our live streaming
I
audience. Are you
love it.
ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right. So this is from
Okay.
Lou Hornberger. He says, "Wasn't it Victor?" And it was Victor E. Frankl,
Yep.
the guy who survived the Nazi concentration camps, who said something about the last thing we own is that no one can take from us our ability to interpret the meaning of events.
That is exactly what he said. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, maybe
Well,
not those exact words, but yes, that was the essence. He wrote "Man's Search for Meaning." Yes.
yes, man's search for meaning. If you wanted to study a deep layer of equanimity, Viktor E. Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning is a must-read book, in my opinion.
Completely agree. Yeah.
That is the things that he went through, the things that he experienced, and what it took for him to get through. It's like, okay, if you can go through that,
Yeah.
then you can go through a lot. And the other thing is, I've had a number of close friends diagnosed with terminal cancer
Mhm.
and all sorts of other things. And I have seen people go through those experiences with I mean, again, not that there's no emotion there, not that there's any worry or fear
No.
or regret or loss or grief. They're there, but I have seen some people go through that with such grace and equanimity that it just boggles the mind, the level with how much one can truly be facing.
Yeah, and I think Lou's comment was so great and perfectly timed, because I think at the essence of that, and what Viktor Frankl, for if you may not know, Viktor Frankl's book "Man's Search for Meaning" was written after he was released from the Nazi concentration camp. I can't remember specifically which one he was in,
He
but
was
and
in
he
Auschwitz, but he was also transferred to, like, 1 or 2 other ones as well.
okay, and he was a psychologist, by the way.
He was a
So
psychologist, and he lost his wife, his mother, his, father, and maybe one other family member, if I'm not mistaken.
in the camp. So, just horrific situation. But Lou's comment was perfectly timed, because the essence of what all of this is about too is where our responsibility really lives. And the only thing that we really do have control over is exactly that. The meaning that we attach to things, excuse me, the way that we see experience, the way that we see our own experience. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
The
want,
meaning and the response.
yeah, the meaning and the response. I mean, that is it. And then the vision that we create for ourselves, that whatever we'd like to live into. I mean, that's really it. And I think that's what he wrote about in the book during a absolutely horrific experience. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about myself. I would like to think that I would be that balanced and that capable in those moments, but I've never been in that situation. So,
Yeah, it's reading those extremes that have helped me
yes.
navigate through some of what I consider to be relatively my most challenging moments.
Yeah.
And then when I think about it, it's like, well, what's this compared to this?
Yeah, it can be helpful. That is where I think some comparison, not a big fan of comparison as a practice, but I think that is where it can be helpful to learn about other people's experiences and to get a sense of like, wow, okay, A, this is what's possible. B, hmm. Not that I want to grade myself on the curve, but let's really sit with this for a second, and we
Yeah.
all have our own, and it's helpful not to get into, again, grading ourselves or anybody else on the curve too much because everybody's experience is their own. But yeah, I think it's very helpful. Story is very helpful. It's inspiring. Let's put it that way.
Yes. And thank you, Lou, for bringing that up. And
Yeah.
thank you for
Thank you.
your live comment.
Yeah. That's fun. So, I want to go one step deeper because you were talking about the experience of being in the cold. And I think it's a really good one, and the nature of experience, and, where this sort of attachment, where this comes from, right? Like my preferences and what happens when, and the reason I want to talk about this part of it is because I think it's a way that and I think you have 5 tips of how we maintain it. I want to talk about how we lose our equanimity. And we could talk about our ego, our identity, but I think this was also another understanding that I gained that was really helpful. So when I looked at the nature of experience and really got with like, oh yeah, nothing is permanent here. It's all coming and going. What I also realized was I had these preferences, and I'm like, well, if everything's just coming and go, like, who am I? Right? Like, am I coming and going? Like, what is
Yeah.
happening here?
That's
Right?
a powerful question.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, it was a wild moment, and it lasted for a good 2 or 3 years. It still can kind of come in and out. And I was like, well, then what am I? Like who am I without these preferences? Like who am I without these sort of attachments to how I want things to go? Then how will I know what or who I am? This was like a big moment in terms of, well, okay, if I really let go of what I like and what I don't like, will I enjoy life? Like, will I get anything out of this? Like, I had this moment of just not really understanding what experience meant. Like, if I had to put a meaning on it, right? And and I really got with like, it doesn't have to mean anything. It comes and it goes, and I can get learnings from it that can be really helpful in navigating and being of service to others. And this is when it started. And it's what made me think of all this when I was putting the outline together was this. But now that you brought up Viktor Frankl, I thought it was really great or when Lou brought it up, because he, in the essence of his book and what he was writing about, was how not only was that of service to himself, but how that became of service to people around it, like in these concentration camps, like people that were able to see beyond their own experience, their momentary experience, were able to be compassionate and supportive to others. I think this is where all these practices to me start to really gain where I really start to gain purchase on them, because I realize like, oh, when I can navigate life in a way that I can appreciate even the crappy stuff, I also can be really compassionate and understanding with other people, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I'm able to be compassionate and understanding to myself, like, oh yeah, I'd really rather have this be different than it is. Well, it's not. Okay, let's just get with that. And then I'm less attached to myself. I'm less attached to like my own sort of perspectives, my own opinions. You were talking about this on one of the shows, and this just came to me, my own opinions about things or what I think about them. Why am I talking? It comes up a lot, right? And so, yeah, when we get with this nature of experience coming and going, we really also get this sense of like, I'm just coming and going too. There's just like what I am over here is not my experience. And I think that comes back to Don Miguel Ruiz and his not taking things personal. Our experiences aren't personal either.
Right.
Yeah.
Un
So,
unless we make them personal, that's the
yeah,
key.
unless we
It
choose to. Yeah.
it whatever as soon as we put a label on our experience,
Mhm.
that becomes our experience.
Yeah. And
We be
becomes like this self.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
create this identity. You talk about the fact that going through this, well, who am I if I don't have these preferences? And one of the things that's shifted, if I were to look at me today, Cliff Ravenscraft
Yeah.
2024,
Yeah.
and go to Cliff Ravenscraft 2014 or Cliff Ravenscraft 04, 2004. Let me just say this. Cliff Ravenscraft 2004, completely unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Certain in almost every aspect. I mean, maybe
Except for
my
the podcasting.
no,
Oh,
2004,
you
there was
weren't even
no
doing it then.
podcasting. I
That's right.
started in
You weren't podcasting then.
2005.
That's right. That's
So,
right. Wow. Okay.
my I my preferences back then, my beliefs back then,
Yes.
my physical physique back then, every significant situation has shifted in such, I mean, my career, what I do for a living, what I believe about money, what I believe about life, what I mean, all, like, not everything. I still carry a lot of things from childhood. There's a lot, I mean, there's percentages. Some people say there's like 80 or 90% of the beliefs that we hold we're not consciously aware of. So
Yeah.
there's a lot still there. But the things that I've been made consciously aware of, so much of that I've intentionally chosen to change
Yeah.
and
Really have.
let go of. And this is one of the things you've said to me on numerous occasions is what you have what it intrigues you about my journey is how many times I'm willing to let go of things that no longer serve me well and to reinvent myself and go create something new.
Yeah.
And
And by the way, also even things that let me grab this. This is really critical. Also things that were serving you well in some ways. Like for example, where you were making a lot of money
yeah,
teaching people how to podcast. I mean, that I think is the real
you're
in
right.
the
Yeah,
in,
because
in the human life, in the human world,
well,
right?
and even
Yeah.
before that, I was in insurance,
Right.
top of my field. So I've done that twice,
Yeah.
where financially, what a lot of people consider to be success on so many levels. Like, listen, financially, I would kill to have the job security that you have in insurance. I would love to have the online business revenue, even if I had to have those emails every single day and blah blah blah. It's like you've got such the privileged life. What a wonderful problem to have. You should just
Mhm.
be lucky and just be content. And I'm like, I get that, but there's something more that I feel called to have.
And I'm dying inside.
There's there's a dream, there's an aspect of me that's not given permission to live, to
Yeah.
thrive. And that spark is getting smothered and suffocated, and I don't want it to wither and die. And
It's
so
so good.
I feel like if I stay in insurance, or if I feel like if I stay in answering technical questions related to this niche area, it sucks the oxygen out of the way that I want to experience my life on a day by day basis.
This is so good because, and by the way, yeah, this is just so helpful in our conversation on equanimity because, you could make the argument, and this is important because this is where the shadows of these things start to show up. You could make the argument, well, Cliff,
Yep.
can't you just find a balanced perspective for your current life and just stay in insurance sales?
I could if
Yes.
there were no options.
Yes, exactly. If there was absolutely nothing else that I could do about this, then yes, I probably could, and it'd probably be a really
It,
helpful
it,
practice.
not only could I'm absolutely certain, given what I know today, I would.
Yeah.
But if it's not a requirement, I'm absolutely certain that if Viktor Frankl had his opportunity to leave the concentration camp, if that opportunity was afforded to him, he would have opted for it more than likely.
Yeah, well, he did get an opportunity, and I don't think he said, "I'd like to stay."
Yeah. So
Right.
but you bring up a valid point. It's like, yeah, but here's the what that shadow side of it is like, well, you know what? I'm just going to stay here in this thing where, like most men, they live with quiet desperation.
Yes. Ralph, was that Henry David Thoreau?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's like, no, you don't have to. I mean, you can, and you can find equanimity there. You
Yeah.
can find joy there. But
And
there is also and thank you. And there is also an opportunity for you to go and create a different path for yourself.
yeah. And that is where it gets really fun. When I am in a space of creating without attachment, it's just fun.
Yeah.
I have no idea where things are going to lead. I have no idea what's going to happen next. It is just fun. And sometimes things are challenging. It reminds me of one time when I climbed a mountain. I climbed Mount Rainier. People are like, why do they climb mountains? Because they're there. And there's just like it's just there's a part of it. It's physically strenuous. It was one of the most challenging mental, emotional things that I had probably done up to that point in my life, as far as a physical challenge. And it was just fun.
You
At
know,
the end of the day, it was fun.
so what I will share is that when I think about some of these things that I've making one transition into another,
Yeah.
there's certainly been a lot of fun along the way. For me, my own experience is, I think a better word for my experience would
Yeah.
be, it was thrilling,
Oh,
because
that's a great
thrilling isn't always fun,
word.
but it was thrilling.
It was really invigorating,
It, it was
titillating.
exciting. Let's just say energy was excited. Not always the best energy, but
Yeah,
whew,
but
but
but it was exciting. There was vitality in it, obviously. There's
there's
a lot of things you might
there's variety like nobody's
yeah,
business.
yeah,
But here's the thing that I recognize, and one of the things for me as I think about the potential audience that I've brought to this podcast is a lot of people who have this desire to leave the lifetime of an employee to
yeah,
go build their own full-time self-employed business. And I've been working with a lot of people who are somewhere in that early stage,
yep.
and the number of people who want it to all be a smooth, fun process, I've not seen a lot of success in that area.
Interesting. So is it more that they're well, expand on that. So is it more that it's the way the
What
meaning that they attach to it, or the way in
so
which
so here's what it is. Cliff, I've worked this many years of my life. I now want to leave this career and I want to go and have my own self-employed business journey.
Mhm.
I don't have any experience with marketing. I don't have any experience with sales. I don't have any experience with technology. I don't have any experience with building an audience. I don't have any experience with content creation.
Do you have at least 2 years of money that you can survive without a job?
And
Years of savings.
also, I have no savings account.
Oh,
I've got about a 3-month runway before I'd have to go out and get another job.
okay.
And I need to be earning a six-figure income within 12 to 18 months. And I'm like, yeah, that's quite, boy, I
Anything's possible, and
anything is possible. I'm interested in going with you on this journey. Let's really get clear about what you want. Have you considered what costs you think might be involved?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of discussion, but for a lot of people, they're not set up for, I would say, the most fun journey ahead. Now, not to say that it's not adventurous and it's thrilling, and it can be life-giving and invigorating, but there are challenges ahead without the right resources. You talk about going hiking and having fun, but my guess is that if you didn't bring either some bear spray
Good point.
or some certain items along with you, that hiking venture could turn not so fun
Yeah,
after.
well, you could be dead.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, great point. This is sort of the we can have balance and the equanimity, and there's also, I mean, again, this is lovely because this is also sort of the I'll call the real world side of things too, right? Like it helps to have some preparation. It helps to have some idea. It helps to have a little bit. I'm a big fan of a plan. It doesn't have to go the way I think it should go, but I am a good fan. I was working on another essay about this exact thing. It's like a friend of mine was going to make a move in her life, and it's like, oh, it's great that you have a plan. You'll handle things just fine. You'll handle everything just fine, regardless if the plan works out or not, because you've handled everything else in your life up to this point. So I'm sure you'll handle that. And there could be either challenges and struggles. And what you're talking about is sort of this perspective of like, yes, let's definitely enjoy ourselves. It can be really fun and great, a thrilling adventure. And it helps to have a little bit of a plan, a little bit of experience. Let's set ourselves up for success.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also love, when we talk about experiencing having a vision, for people that are in jobs, like the other side of this can be like, well, I think what we were talking about was, you know, when you've chosen to make these changes and you've found a part of yourself that's like, yeah, this isn't my preference. I am feeling that something else wants to come through in my life, and I'm feeling called to do these other things. And I'm imagining, Cliff, that you didn't just run in headlong, all these changes that you have made. There's been steps,
Yeah.
on your journey, right? There've been
That so
planning.
Graham Cochran, I just was listening to a podcast episode in his archives, and he was interviewing some guy who's an NLP coach.
Oh
And
yeah.
in the conversation, he actually tells my story of transitioning from podcast answer man to mindset answer man. He goes, "Oh, Cliff Ravens, he's out there. And he made all this money, and then within a year and a half, or no, within 90 days, he replaced all his income." And it's like, that sounds like an amazing story. I'd like to meet that guy.
Yeah. That
Because
is amazing
that
story.
wasn't my experience. I mean, by the
Like, I couldn't expect it.
technically speaking, when I shut down podcasting A to Z, 90 days later, was I making a minimum of $20,000 a month? The answer to that question is yes. Had I replaced my income within 90 days of shutting down 100% of my podcast technical consulting business? The answer is yes. But the thing is people will hear that and they're like, I want to hire Cliff so that he can help me do that.
Yeah.
But what's not there is I made the decision to shut down the technical side of my business in October 2017.
Right. You were already
Okay.
on the journey of
But in January 2015 is when I made the decision I don't want to teach the technical aspects of podcasting anymore. So we're talking almost 3 full years
Yeah.
of transition, of creating a plan, of navigating other possibilities. What would this look like? What if I try this? It doesn't include all the things that I tried during the 3 years that failed, that didn't work, that I lost money on. So that one day, ultimately, I found the things that would, and once I had certainty, I shut it down. And within 90 days, I focused all on the things that I found would work. And yes, within 90 days, I replaced my income.
Yeah.
But
I love it. I love it.
it's like, wait a second, there's more to this
There's way
story.
more here. Well, and it's so helpful. I mean, I think again in the beauty of getting the full details, it's so helpful. We can fall into our magical thinking, right?
Yeah.
And nothing like the internet to help us with that.
Yes.
So sweet. So I know you had 5 tips. I think we brought this up before we started recording. 5 tips for equanimity. I think you mentioned it.
So I was working with ChatGPT. One of the things that I do in the
With
mornings
the robots.
with the robots,
Oh,
yes,
the robots.
our future overlords.
Cliff, before we hit record, Cliff told me that I need to be nice to the robots.
Be nice to the AI. One day you're gonna regret that, because they're gonna remember this. This is transcribed somewhere in a large language model. Daphne Scott said
And they've
this.
got my name. They've got my name.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was, going to the gym this morning, and I'm having a audio chat with ChatGPT, and I said, "What are 5 tips for keeping your equanimity?" And the first one is practice mindfulness. Regular mindfulness meditation can help you stay present, aware,
Big
reducing
fans.
reactivity. So mindfulness for me, the way that I think about this is like, okay, I'm aware that I've just been triggered by this email of such and such. And now all of a sudden I am angry and a little bit upset and a little bit of hurt. And I can't believe they did this again. And it's like, oh, hold on. It
Bing.
might be a great thing for me to sit down and have a mindful meditation moment and to sit down for 10 minutes and just breathe and just first let go of that
Mhm.
and focus on where I am in this room, in this moment. And I love Byron Katie's. If you couldn't have that thought,
Yeah.
who would you be? And
Yeah.
so
She's
I'm
my
like,
favorite.
I refuse to allow myself to have the thought of this experience for a few moments. And instead, I'm going to focus on the fact that I'm in a safe environment, a beautiful home that was my dream home that I wanted to build. I'm thankful for the air and the oxygen in my lungs and all this other stuff. And then it's like, oh, okay, I feel a lot better right now. Now I go back to, okay, let's go back to this situation, this scenario here that just happened. Why did I actually have that? Oh, because I had this story about what it means, this story about what it means, this story about what it means. Number one, I have made an agreement not to take this personally. My reaction was very personal. And the other thing is this person, there's this person absolutely given who they are, what they're experiencing, what's going on in in their world, it made every bit of sense for them to choose what they chose.
Mhm.
And why would I resist that? My resisting that is like saying it's 12 degrees outside, it should be 80. You know, it's not going to be
It's
80,
not
it's
gonna be
12.
right. Right. You might
This
as well
person
teach a cat to bark.
so that's the first one is practice a mindfulness moment to get into this, to get out of the immediate reaction.
Yep.
The next one is develop emotional awareness, which of course is that second part of the mindfulness is like become aware of the emotion and the story and the narrative behind it. Stay grounded in activities that help you stay grounded, such as spending time in nature, exercising, and practicing yoga. So go out for a walk, go out for a hike, go out and do something. These things can bring some great equanimity into our lives.
Yes.
Maintain perspective is another one. Remind yourself of the bigger picture and that there's both good and bad times that come into life. It's a part of experience, and all of it's temporary.
Yeah. That's the big one. It's
And
my
then
favorite.
And then the fifth one is self-compassion. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding, especially during challenging times. And the whole thing here is don't get upset with yourself because you had another reaction. Just hey, learn from it. And what I've discerned is over time I when I was before any of this, I could get into emotional responses and emotional reactions to things, and they would last days or weeks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then I would get down to days, and then I would get down to hours. And sometimes I can catch it in the moment as it's happening on the fly, but I go up and down on depends on where I'm at in my own level of consciousness. Um, even still today, I can have an experience and I'm like, man, I'm feeling that kind of wave of that anxiety and that fear. It's been
Mhm.
hanging on for the last 2 or 3 days. It
Yeah.
subsided when I went and did my mindfulness thing, and it subsided when I went and did my workout and when I was journaling and all this other stuff. But wow, it the next wave of it just came behind me. It's like, what's going on here? And just being aware of it and just giving myself grace. It's like, listen, I know that I know these things,
Yeah.
and yet I still am aware that these things are happening, and just to give myself grace and self-compassion.
I think that is just the root of all of this is being very loving and kind. I always, when you said being compassionate to ourselves, like talk to yourself like you would talk to a dear friend who you loved.
Yeah.
Like a real friend, not somebody who just commiserates with you and tells you how horrible agrees with you about how horrible your life is. like a real friend, someone who really, and to talk to yourself in that way, to
Yeah.
be that person with yourself. And boy, as I took that practice on many, many years ago, that was a game changer, because we can just judge ourselves so harshly, and think that we should think that we should have it figured out. And that is just crazy.
Yeah, especially when we feel like for me, it's like, oh man, I've totally mastered this,
Yeah.
and I've learned. It's like, let's just not jump to that conclusion.
I do my best not to jump to that conclusion. Oh, you've got it figured out?
Level 2 complete. Okay, how many levels are there? Infinite.
That's it. That's the whole game right there. Yeah, I'm on level 2. How many are there? Infinite levels. You're still going.
Really for me, that's if I want to know what really helps me in equanimity is to
Yeah.
understand this is an infinite game.
It is an infinite game. It is with infinite possibilities. And, so glad to be alive to experience it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's it.
So I remember last episode, what prompted this was, is it okay to get overjoyed? Is there
Yeah.
danger in getting overjoyed? So I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, let's just assume that over the next 3 weeks, I bring on 4 new clients who all pay in for that brings $60,000 in revenue. How do I keep myself from training my nervous system to getting overly excited? All right. And
Okay.
here's what ChatGPT
What did the robot say?
Stop that. ChatGPT, I like you. And I am so appreciative of your feedback.
I just
All right.
love giving you a hard time about it.
I know. Number 1, celebrate mindfully. Acknowledge and celebrate your achievement in a way that is satisfying, but not excessive. This could be a quiet dinner with family, or just a moment of gratitude and really reflecting and being in appreciation. So that's kind of the first one.
Okay.
The second one, which by the way is a whole lot different than yes, yes,
I think that's okay too.
It can be, but that's the thing though, that I do think there is a potential in wiring your nervous system say, I can only feel that good when this happens.
Oh, well, that's different. Yeah, that's different.
Because it creates that anchor, that good feeling is this thing happening out there.
Yes. That's very different.
Yes.
Okay, I see what you're pointing to. Yeah.
That's what I'm pointing to.
Yeah. That joy is already in there. It is not dependent on an external circumstance.
I don't need 4 new clients to pay me in full for me to have that reaction to life.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So that I'm not saying I shouldn't go out and celebrate and scream for joy and blah, 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 but I could do that just because the sun decided to shine with blue skies and beautiful fluffy clouds.
Cliff, you're getting right at the root. I mean, that's what I was attempting to explain when I talked about experience. When we think that it's fine to want to create the experiences that we'd like to have in our life. I think that's great. However, when my deepest peace, joy, calm is attached to an experience, good luck, because it is going to come and it is going to go.
Exactly. That is exactly it. That is it. And it causes that roller coaster of emotions.
Bingo.
And the thing is that roller coaster ride, you have no control over the next hill, the next curve, the next anything.
And it's fun. Go do it.
It can be fun.
Yeah.
It can be thrilling. It can be scary as well.
Yeah. And just recognize that joy, that exuberance that you just demonstrated, by the way, so well, is in you right now, clients or not.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So the second one, it says, stay focused on long-term goals. Remind yourself that while this success is significant and celebrated, it's worthy of celebration, it is a part of a larger journey. And what I love about that is that the opposite is true. If I just lost 4 clients all at once who are paying monthly, let's just say, and that's a loss of a significant amount of income. Well, remind yourself that this is just a part of a larger journey.
Yes.
I love that one. Stay focused on the long term. Let's see. Number 3, practice regular reflection. Spend time journaling about the experience. Reflect on what led to this success and how you can continue to build on it without overly attaching yourself to the outcome.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I can tell you right now that if there's one thing that's been in my entrepreneurial journey, it is having a wave of new clients, getting super celebratory,
Right.
and then getting out of the habit of doing the things that brought that in the first place,
Yep.
which
Which,
then
by the way, I also want to add to that. Yes, there are actions you are taking, which are very wise and necessary, I would say. And also there's all these other things that have to come together. That's why I think the gift of not getting attached to the outcome is
yes,
so necessary, because for outcomes to happen, I mean, I think this is where the identity and the ego gets really hooked. It thinks it did all of it,
right.
and it didn't.
Yeah, and
Right.
because one could do exactly the same things,
Yes.
cookie cutter, everything, and not get any results.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
there's so many
So
variables.
many. Yeah.
The next one is maintain routine. Stick to your regular routines and habits. This helps you keep your day-to-day lifestyle into your or life stable,
Yeah.
and prevents you from riding the emotional roller coaster and this intensity of having too high and too low.
Yeah.
And then it talks about the grounding activities. So meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, these things will help you maintain that equanimity. And that's the other thing is like the times that I just feel that natural call to be in nature is unbelievable. And
Yeah.
and sometimes I live in an area where my desired nature is to go into the mountains and walk up a
Mhm.
hiking trail, and I don't have that close to me. But sometimes just walking outside and seeing the moon and the stars and just staring up in awe.
Yeah, it's so great. I'm
Ah,
a big
I love
water
it.
person, and I don't always have. I live in Oklahoma, so the water's not a big water land, and I love it. Just going outside. I think just hearing the birds. I'm a very avid bird watcher as well, and just watching the birds, watching them just go through their daily existence is very, very grounding. It's very calming, and it really can help bring us back to that sense of just equanimity, just peace.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it.
Finding the balance we're truly looking for. Daphne, what's your call to action?
My call to action today is really for really, I'm going to shift it because I would like to just have a call to action for people to read Man's Search for Meaning if you haven't read it.
Awesome. I love
I
that.
just I just think just giving people a moment just to kind of absorb what we've talked about today, and that's my simplest call to action right now in the moment.
Awesome. My call to action, I want to encourage people to go to mindsetanswerman.com/free. And if you go there, you'll get my All Beliefs Have Consequences talk. And it will teach you how to become consciously aware of the beliefs that are causing you to have all of these emotional reactions in the first place. It will also teach you how to discover the source of those beliefs. It will teach you how to disassociate those beliefs and how to find empowering alternatives so that you can actually have a different experience of life. All beliefs have consequences. It's available for free over at mindsetanswerman.com/free. Here's the other thing. It's a part of my sales funnel and process and all this other stuff, but I'm going to say this in the podcast here. After probably about an hour after you sign up, you're going to get an email from me saying, "Hey, did you get what you were promised?" And it's going to present to you an opportunity to buy the full Free the Dream course for $197. Don't buy the course. Hit reply on that email. It'll come into my inbox and say, "Hey, Cliff, I heard you on the podcast say that I could have the course for free." I will then go in and grant you free access to the entire Free the Dream course.
That's awesome. That's great.
Sweet.
So mindset mastermind. Say it one more
Easy for
time.
Daphne to say.
Thank you.
Mindsetmasterman.com/free.
Thank you. Got it.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
Daphne.
Stephanie. They both
Yep,
end with E sounds.
exactly.
Yeah.
What do we want people to do? Until next time,
Oh, choose your own adventure.
there we go.